Hey, Renter Retires. It's Adam Schroeder here with another episode. We are not able to be joined by our CEO, Zach Lemaster, but we are joined by a special guest. This is Chris Prefontaine. He is a multiple-time best-selling author and author of the new book, Real Estate on Your Terms. He is also the founder and CEO of Smart Real Estate Coach. Chris, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Adam. I'm looking forward to having a chat and letting everyone listen in.
Yeah, so I want to start with your story back in 2008. That was not a pretty time from you based on what I've read and heard. So can you talk us through a little bit about your experience during the Great Recession and kind of how that changed your mindset of real estate?
Yeah, so thank you. Well, I say thank you. I love when people bring up the pain, and I got to throw salt in the wound. But here's what happened. So I entered real estate around 1991. So I'm going on 30 and a half years, and building up to the 2008 crash, obviously without knowing about it, I had bought the standard way that so many people buy. I had been a realtor for 18 years or whatever it was, maybe 13 at that time. And I thought, okay, you either go conventional loan or you borrow some money from investors, but either way, you're signing on funding. I learned the hard way after the crash with 22, 23 properties or so that the banks came knocking, basically, long story short, because I was on it personally. It was a big lesson. And so I didn't file bankruptcy like 1,000 people told me to do. I worked my way out of it in many different ways, but it took 4 years. 4 years to work out either liquidation, payment plans, foreclosures, whatever it was, sell-offs. And that was an ugly time. So coming out of that, I said, February of 12, because it was like February of 8, like you flipped a switch. I remember where I was. I remember what happened. In February of 12, finally, it was, okay, decision time. Do I enter the market again aggressively because I can't tinker? And if I do, what are the rules, so to speak? Like, how are we going to play? And what became of that little self-discovery was what we do now, what we've done for the last 13 years. And that is 14 now. That is buying real estate without using my personal credit, my personal signature, or cash or banks. We just don't do it. So we control about 90 million of real estate around the country between ourselves and our associates we do deals with. And literally, there's very little to no money down on that, and there's no personal signatures on any loans. So it did re-engineer how we do business.
Now, since the 2008 time and since you started, obviously the real estate market has been doing pretty well. How do you, if there is, I don't think we're near it, but if there is another downturn,
yeah,
I know your name's not on any of these loans that you have, like you're talking about, but what concerns, if any, do you have if we experience another, let's say there's a downturn with a correction of 20%, would your current way that you're doing it work in those environments?
Yeah, great question. So we built it in 12 with the lessons to literally thrive in up, down, or sideways markets. The toughest market is what we just went through, where it's just hotcakes, the selling. Why is it toughest? Because I'll give you metrics. I got to do about 70 live leads. I got to talk to 70 live sellers that are interested to talk to me to get one house. Whereas in a little bit tougher market, I hope it's heading that way now. It looks like it is with the interest rates going up so fast. It's going to at least calm things down a little bit. It's going to push buyers to the side. It's going to slow down demand. That's happening. It's not a prediction. It's just going on right now. So it's going to make it a little bit closer to where we were, which is like 25 to 40 leads to go get a deal. That's like less than half. So it's gonna thrive, not survive, and it's gonna be a little bit easier. It's been painful for about 9 months or so, maybe a year, because when we entered COVID in 20, it was a spike for us because people were unclear and they just needed guidance. Yeah. And then, of course, when things stayed hot, it got a little harder for us and our students to get deals. You can always get deals, but that was an awful long answer to say I literally can't wait for the market shifting and changing in chaos, because that's when you can thrive with the terms business by far.
Yeah, I always found it interesting. People talk about stocks, buy when there's blood in the street. It's hard enough for people to actually do that. But then in real estate, you'd think that they would have the same mindset of, home prices are stabilizing or maybe dropping a little bit in a certain, in the market that you like. But then, it's terrifying and you don't want to do it then. And so how do you help people, or what is your philosophy on kind of avoiding the blood in the streets, run away, as opposed to there's blood in the street, let's go in and buy and actually implement the strategy that we recommend?
Well, a couple things come to mind when you say that. So we, first and foremost, is we educate the Wicked Smart community weekly on our calls. Like tonight's a call, and I'm going to give a market update at the beginning of it, right? It's for our private community. And in that technique or strategy, a lot of it is we have in the last 24 months pushed out the terms that we're structuring with sellers, where in 13 and 14, I might be very comfortable with a 3 or 4 year term. I want to see 5 bare minimum, and I'd like to see 10-year terms. And then I don't care as much what the heck happens with the market, literally. I mean, my building I purchased on owner financing, for example, my office building with multiple tenants and my companies in it. And I did a 20-year term. I don't care what the market does. So that's a good example. And if I can be purchasing property that way on longer terms, i.e. sub 2 existing financing, owner financing, I don't care what the market does. Because the way we've structured our 3 paydays, and we've trademarked it in the United States, the way we structured the 3 paydays, we get paid very well upfront, over time, and long term. And if we can push the term out, I don't care if the market does, ups and downs 3 or 4 times in there. It doesn't matter to us.
So you mentioned kind of back in the day, you were just doing conventional financing and those types where your name was on it. In your book, I believe you cover 6 different types of buying that people can do. Can you go over a little bit of how you can actually work in real estate and buy properties not in your name, not signing, the bank document stating, yeah, I'm responsible for this loan?
Yeah, it's huge. So the 3 primary ways, and there's all offshoots, as you just alluded to, the 3 primary ways would be lease purchase, owner financing, and subject to existing financing. So I'll just give like a real quick 10,000 foot view on each. Lease purchase is great for anyone listening is brand new, because the deed does not transfer. I'll explain to you what it does do. And you put, literally, our agreements are built with $10 deposit, Adam. What's really cool is, like, I got one of our students comes to mind, Brian, in Chicago. He did his first 7 or maybe 8 deals, all lease purchase. He didn't go the other route, and I'll explain why in a minute. And he amassed like about $800,000 in 3 paydays with us. I mean, that's pretty huge. And he had no experience, and he put $10 in each house. 10. It's built into our agreements. So here's how it works. He put a house under agreement by way of a lease purchase agreement that we provide. We have all the forms that we provide. And then he goes out with his right to do so, and he finds a buyer who needs time to get mortgage ready. That's who we work with. That's why this market coming up now with the rates changing is going to be phenomenal for us. So when he does that, he's in the middle. We call it a sandwich lease. You can't do that in Texas, but you can do it everywhere else as of right now that we're on this recording. That's a really cool strategy. There is no signing of any debt. You're going to be making the underlying payment on the seller's debt once you find your buyer to cover it. That's it. You're not out there naked. You're not taking over payments till you have someone covering it. And then the owner financing, we niche down even deeper. We say, okay, owner financing is great. It's been done since 1600s, but we do it with free and clear property. So free and clear, usually there's a majority of those that are not on the market. So you're not fighting the craziness going on right now. And free and clear sellers, unlike some of the other sellers we deal with that are stressed, that I'll talk about next, they're not stressed. They just want the most money. And usually they'll take it over time if they can get the most money, because they're debt free. If they needed money, they would have pulled it out, right? Presumably. So we structure principal only monthly payments with these sellers, principal only. So think about that with a market change. Every month you're making a payment and it's hammering down principal. It's the best recession resistant technique that we've got going on inside of the creative financing world. So the owner financing is, you're never signing personally. The seller becomes your bank. You make payments to them. And I think I maybe been asked in 700 deals, just in the owner financing, not the other two, if I'd signed personally by a seller's attorney. And I said no. And if that's going to bother them, then there's no deal. They got their house for security. And we did the deal. It was a 6-unit building, actually. So literally, we don't get challenged on it. The last way is subject to existing financing. Unlike free and clear, subject to existing financing usually is people stressed. It's like the opposite end of the spectrum here, because these forbearances are coming due right now. And like 2 weeks ago in Michigan, we did one, the poor woman, and we're helping these people. That's why it's so cool. The poor woman would lose her house in a matter of months because she couldn't afford a simple $600 per month first payment and a second mortgage of like 200 something. She needed literally about 2 or 3 grand to catch those up in arrears, and she would save her credit and be able to move on. That's what we did for her. So we broke the mold of no money down, but that was little money down to catch about 60 grand in equity free on that house. She just needed closure and get the heck out of there and save my credit and my financial stress. So the loan stayed in her name. We bought the house. The loan stayed in her name. We make the payments. That's what subject to existing financing means if someone's brand new to that. I love that because now I own that forever if I want to, or if I can exit it with our program, I can do that too. So I don't know. I can go back to any one of those, Adam, but that's like high level, those 3 main ones we do. And we, again, all the agreements are built to not have you sign personally.
Yeah. So in today's market, well, first off, let's backtrack a little bit. And you mentioned kind of seeing the rising interest rates cooling off the market. What are your kind of long-term thoughts? I say long-term, like the next 1 to 2, maybe even 3 years for the housing market. Do you think it's just going to be kind of like a slowdown? Do you think it's going to be a drop? Kind of how do you envision the market playing out over the next few years?
Yeah, I always preface this. This is the biggest question now, right? So I always preface it with this. Everybody who you hear making predictions on CNBC or whatever it is that you watch, right? They're telling the truth in their head, but they're lying because nobody knows. The billionaires don't know. If I knew and Adam knew, we'd be on a beach somewhere, having a pina colada and chatting about it and laughing, but we don't know. What I do know is the market will forever and ever and ever change, right? We all know that. That's a given. It's just when. So if we know it's going to change, why not understand how to structure deals to accommodate that? And that's what we've done in the terms niche. So given that, I'm okay with pivoting no matter what. If you want my prediction, it is that I think with these rates going up, it's going to slow it down a bit. Do I think there's going to be a crash? I don't personally. I think you said at the beginning that you didn't either. I think it might flatten out, in which case that would be ideal. Or if it goes down just a certain percentage, that would also be ideal for our niche. If it crashes, you are going to have some sellers panicking, and we are going to grab some properties. Now think about something here. If that happens, it's okay if it does, by the way. If it happens, how many houses do you think with rates in the mid 2s to the low 4s that were taken out over the last 3 or 4 years and 5, whatever it was, how many of those do you think you could buy and have that as a sub 2 property forever? That's pretty cool. When rates are probably going to hit 6, who knows how high they'll go, but maybe they are now. I don't know. My son-in-law locked in like 5.3 last week. That 90 days ago, they told him 3.5. 90 days ago.
Yeah.
So I can't wait. So no matter which way it pivots, as you can tell from your questions and my answer correspondingly, it doesn't matter. It's then just, okay, great. How do we structure it then that's going to benefit all parties involved? Super healthy transaction.
Yeah. In your world now, the way that you're structuring it, it doesn't sound like you would. Is there a situation where you would take out a conventional 30-year loan?
Only on personal residence. I'll give you an example. I'm sitting in my home office today, just an off day for me. I'm doing some interviews here instead of my office. But I bought a little cottage here because I wanted this neighborhood, because out that window, I'm looking at the water. So in that case, I could look and look and look, and I did. I mailed, I called, and I couldn't get a terms deal in this neighborhood. So it's my personal residence. So I went ahead and I took a loan out for 23% debt to equity. So I broke the rule, but I also made sure it was ridiculously low. And then I tore it down and built what I'm sitting in. But I did sign personally on the first loan. I built the house cash. So there are exceptions, and I say it's for your personal residence because you have to make family decisions. My son-in-law just did that. He's moving back to Massachusetts with my grandkids, and he said, I want this neighborhood and this school system. Therefore, I'll do my mailings. I'll do all my things. He couldn't get one. The market's still red hot. So he just bought it, conventionally.
Yeah. So talking about kind of going about your strategy, I mean, it's not the strategy that we usually employ here, but you're also looking for completely different property types than most of our buyers are who come to us. So how do you actually, if someone's looking to do this strategy, how do you actually find people who are, looking to do this kind of financing for their deal? Or do you have to convince them that they're looking for this type of financing? Because it's not like someone's going to put a sign out in front of their house that says, hey,
Yeah.
I'm a distress, I'm a stressed home seller.
Yeah.
Need to get out of this this mortgage because, at least I haven't seen one of those signs.
Yeah, I agree. You might see owner financing signs, but that's rare. My building had a big sign out front, like 4x8, saying for sale by owner, owner financing available, and nobody called them. Crazy. Okay, so here's what we do. When someone starts new, we help them with a very simple service. It's like 60 or 80 bucks a month, and it'll feed them daily live feed of expired listings in their market, 50-mile radius, for sale by owners in their market, 50-mile radius, and for rent by owner. They're very tired landlords right now on that list. So for rent by owner has been a good one. Those three are usually enough sort of core leads to keep a new person busy, depending on how big their goals are. If they have more aggressive goals, or if they go full-time quickly, because a lot of our students wish to do that, and we help them do that, and they want to up their lead flow, then we get into niched lists, which would be that free and clear list. Properties with no mortgages. There's a third of the properties in the United States that don't have a mortgage. Like, I was on the phone with a mortgage broker, Adam, I think it was a good few months ago now, but she said, I gave her that stat, and she said, no. In Naples, Florida, where she was talking to me, she said 52% are free and clear. There's a place you can mail and speak to some really cool owners who love structuring cool deals because they don't want their money now for trust and estate and tax reasons. That's who does it. So we're never convincing, to go right back to your question. We're always kind of just listening. What is the problem? Or in the case of free and clear, what is the goal they're trying to achieve that the conventional market might not give them exactly, like the building I bought? And then that we go with that. We never try to convince, because we're buying real estate, right? We're not trying to convince them. We're a buyer. They're selling. They can convince us of what they're trying to accomplish, and we'll see if we can fix it. My building was for sale for $550 on a they call it $1 million alley. It's like a very busy area. Across the street is Home Depot and BJ's. And he said, I do not want a conventional cash out. So realtors were coming to him with buyers, and he didn't want it for tax in the state and other planning reasons. So I went in, structured a full price deal, full price. And I said, I'll pay you principal only. He said, what do you mean? He was a big landowner. He said, I want interest. I said, well, we only do principal. So how about we both try to win here? I did 2 years of principal only, which got the principal down to like 490 or something, or 480. And then we amortized the balance. That was cool, because the conventional loan wouldn't do that, as you know, not right away. And so he loved it. He was a math guy. He loved it. So I just, again, long answer, but there's all kinds of problems and or goals that we're out there to help or fix.
Yeah. So one of the things that we love about real estate investing is the tax benefits that come with it. With the way you structure these deals, can you get the tax benefits that you can get if you get a loan in your name and you're paying the interest and doing all of those things?
Okay, so this is a good question, and many people miss that. So spot on. So you can't, as a investor, write off anything in a sandwich lease. It's money in, money out, right? So that's why that's a good strategy for when you're new. But as fast as I can get you over to the sub 2 in the owner financing camp, now you own it. So now you are depreciating, you are writing off everything on that property because you own it. And as you know, that follows the deed. Now there's a cool strategy. I call it wealth stacking. I'm in the process of trademarking that, because what we do is we take the sandwich leases that a new person just accumulated, i.e. Brian in Chicago that I mentioned, and we took 3 of his already, and we're calling the owner and we're restructuring the deal to buy it sub 2. They now know him, trust him, like working with him because he's paid their payment for 1, 2, 3 years. Now he's going to go ahead and buy that property, take over the title, loan stays in the seller's name, and now he owns that for a long time. He can do what with that? He can rent it, right? Retire in the rental, or he can exit the way we do with rent to own. He's got options. He owns it. So that's a cool strategy to get back into the ownership mode and the advantages to your question.
Okay. And the way you're talking about structuring these deals and kind of you said people are looking for the most out of it. Are you having to overpay for it then because of the way that you're structuring it, or kind of are you able, especially in this market with a lot of bidding wars out there, or kind of how are you able to buy it at market? Do you have to buy over market in order to entice them?
Yeah, we're usually buying at market or less, whatever their commission would have been, especially if it's an expired listing. 98% of for sale by owners end up listing with an agent. So most of them have a commission in their head. So our script usually sounds like, hey, Adam, if you did sell, you didn't, but if you did sell, what did you think you were going to net? Most of them in their mind build in the commission and a buffer. We're usually going to on that call, say, I can get you that. I mean, we can do this right away. Or if it's an owner financing deal, like my building, would I have been okay to go to, say, 520? I'm sorry, instead of 550, 570. Would I have been okay with that? Yes. Here's why. That 20 grand premium, I was paying them $3 grand a month principal. So that 20 grand premium in 7 months, I just ate it up, and I got a 20-year deal. So on occasion with the principal only, we'll get to a premium if we really want the property, but it's always going to be eaten up between 1 and 6 months. That's what I teach the students. On the other properties, no, we don't overpay.
Okay. And you mentioned one of the things in here that I love is you talk about kind of the mental hurdles that people have to break through. And I believe it's your chapter titled, and I'm sorry, I'm having to pull it up because I don't want to butcher the actual sentence. It's your yeah, but fill in your self-imposed roadblock here. What are some of the biggest self-imposed roadblocks that you see whenever you're talking with, especially newer investors? And then is there kind of whenever you get people, you mentioned from like the sandwich lease to the owner finance, is that kind of a jump people have to make too, or do they just kind of seamlessly transition? So what are some of the mental roadblocks that you're getting over there? Because we obviously, as I'm helping people, obviously when they first start, especially, they got to get over, some of the things, especially with us, it's, I'm investing outside of my local market. So, that's scary. I have to build a team from afar. So that's a little scary, and that's another question is, are you helping people invest just in their market, or are they branching out into other parts of the country?
Yeah, this is good to kick around. So I'll go with the last one. It's easy. We teach people to do just around their immediate area, 50-mile radius, unless like I've got a student in Arizona and she's got a lot of, empty land. So she has to journey out a little bit more, but basically they can get enough deals to accomplish their goal within 50 miles. And let me qualify and quantify why I say that. Our 3 paydays average right across the country, east to west coast, a low of 45,000, all 3 paydays per deal, to a high of $250,000 and up, all 3 paydays per deal. So when you look at those numbers and a student comes in and says, hey, I want to make 100 grand this year, I want to make 200, whatever it is, 500. I don't want to water this down, but it's not hard to structure a plan to do that if they're willing to do the work. So that's why we keep them local. As far as mental roadblocks, this could go long, but I'm going to be brief. The mental roadblocks, in my opinion, is the entire thing. I can teach, after 30 years, I can teach anyone literally how to deal structure. Then, okay, if that's the case, and that's not an ego statement, it's just skill set wise, it's easy to teach. Then why do some do a deal? I think our lowest in our community is 32 days. It took them to their first deal, but some 365 days, literally. I had a student do that, and then he did 3 deals, all 6 figures each, out in Colorado. Why is that? Well, it's the mental piece that you're bringing up right now. And I didn't say this in the book this way, because now in hindsight, I can look back and say, well, it's the mindset piece. It's I just came from a job. This is going to be great to be on my own. And then it's, oh, wow. I literally had a student say, nobody tells me what to do anymore. They were baffled by, I got to do a schedule. It sounds crazy, doesn't it? But he's one of our better students now. But he said to me, Chris, this was weird. I'm used to doing work and tell me. So you got that issue. You got the issue of, well, you get all these crazy commercials in real estate that say, get rich quick, $1 million next year. It's just not reality. So their expectations are all screwed up, and they come in and it takes work. Is the return on investment huge? Yes. So these mental roadblocks really revolve around, does it work for me? Does it work in my area? Does it work in my price range? And of course, it's yes to all that. Again, this has been done since 1600s. We just trademarked some things and put some support around it, made it a little bit more palatable for people, but it's been done forever. So I could keep going with the examples, but the mental game is a toughie. We have what's called the genius model that we teach on, Adam, and it's got 3 pillars. Skill set, of course, you're going to want to do this. Systems, so you can scale the thing if you want. And then mindset. Those are the three pillars. And I have guests on my podcast and I ask them their opinion. They go, yeah, mindset's like 80 to 100% of it. Because the other stuff you can learn in a year,
Yeah. So, you mentioned the get rich quick schemes that are out there. And right. I mean, honestly, hearing somebody, you talking about, $10, they're making, 100,000, couple 100,000, that sounds like a get rich quick scheme. So what are the dangers to this? Yep. And, how how are you able to do this kind of thing?
Yeah, so we're from New England, so we kind of lay it out, right? We tell the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I'll just say this side note on our YouTube channel, like we lay out deals and we don't give you all the fluffy ones. We tell you where we screwed up because we screw up, right? And I've been at this a long time. We still screw up. So what are some pitfalls that we've learned? This brings me back mentally to 2019. In 19, we had a tough year in our business. And you go, well, what do you mean? The market was like just normal. Yeah, but what happened was we realized now in hindsight, so we've changed our criteria, that we put some buyers in these homes to the tune of like maybe 10%. That's too high in my book. So some investors don't care about this factor, but we want to make sure our buyers are winning and cashing out. Well, we put some in that we should have qualified better. And so we had headaches with them. And so one of the biggest pitfalls in how we exit any one of those 3 deals is certainly making sure the buyer is a buyer, not a wannabe buyer that's renting and has had a credit problem their whole life. There's a big difference. And so that is one big mistake we made. The second is when the students make this, if we're not on their shoulders constantly, that's why our program does that. Like we're with them in the trenches. And that is forcing a deal because it's your first deal maybe. And you can't, this is like amazing. I got my first deal, and you push it and you emotionally get involved. There can be trouble there because now you got a house that you either can't sell right away. Now, granted, we make it contingent upon our buyer, but you just wasted 4 months or whatever time it took. So those are some hurdles. The other hurdle that you kind of asked in the last question I didn't answer, it just reminded me, is when they move, why don't they go right to sub 2 and owner financing our students? What is it tougher? Is it scary? Yeah. Instead of being in the middle of a lease purchase agreement, you're taking ownership. And so if you do an owner financing deal or a sub 2 deal, are there some expenses, unlike the lease purchase for $10? Yeah. If you're asking a seller to go no money down, you probably have to pay for the transfer tax if your estate has one, even though it's small. You got to do it because you can't say, hey, I'm going to give you no money down. You pay your own transfer tax. Cut it.
So give you negative money down.
Yeah. Good luck. So all these things can happen. But Adam, this is why our biggest thing is bridging the gap in the industry. We have t-shirts that say bridge the gap, because I think that if students could come in and have this interactive model that we have, they no longer have that, oh, when I went to the seminar, it was really fluffy and sounded great. Then I go in the field, well, this sucks. I got to actually work and I get curveballs and, I didn't know that script. So we do it with them. We literally help call. We critique calls. We help with buyers. My son, Nick, does that. Like we're in the trenches with them so that they can learn it the fastest. It breaks down the learning curve.
Yeah. Whenever you are structuring a for sale by owner, because I think that's probably one of the ones that people have heard of the most, what are some of the pitfalls you need? Because so like if I see a sign that says, for sale by owner, and I go in, what are some of the big concerns that I should have, the things I should be looking at? I'm assuming I'm going to take the contract to a real estate attorney and have them look it over. So what are some of the things that you need to make sure you know about whenever you're buying a for sale by owner?
Yeah. Well, first general comment, in each market, there is a kind of a different pond to fish in depending on which way the market's going. Example, for sale by owners in the last, say, year, were tougher. Why? They were selling. And so when you're dealing with this for sale by owner, I'm going to give you 2 categories: for sale by owner versus expired listing. If I call an expired listing, likely I can get an appointment. They just expired. They're annoyed with realtors and they want a solution. If I call a FSBO, they're a FSBO because they think they can sell it. That's why they're a FSBO. So that's going to need some follow-up. So those are just kind of mindset things. I think your question is more along the lines of what to be careful of, right? Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay. So they're the same with all deals. They're making sure that you structure the right term with the seller, and the right term is never under 3 years. And in this market, as I said earlier, hopefully 5 or more. And then secondly, making sure the buyer you get can be qualified. We call it being mortgage ready, with a game plan to be mortgage ready inside of that term. If not, you're getting excited for a deal. You shoehorn in anything they say. I'll do 3 years. I can do that. And then you go get a buyer and you get excited because you can get what we call payday 1, but then it's the wrong fit. And then you get to the end zone and the dates don't work. Nobody's cashing anybody out. Now you look like an idiot. Now you're not on that deal personally. You can give it back, but now you just screwed up your business and your credibility. So deal structuring is so important. That's why I tell people, like, we get 150 deals on YouTube. I tell my students, to my best ones, have you gone in there lately and reviewed like a deal a day? It doesn't take long. Making sure you know how to be that sort of that transaction engineer, I call it my book. So you know how to pivot on each deal. I know it's very broad, but it's deal structuring is the answer.
Yeah. And so you mentioned that you've trademarked the 3 paydays. When are the 3 times that people should be looking to get paid if they're taking this path?
Yeah, and let me say why I did it. Remember I said at the very beginning, I forget what prompted with your questions, but it was I came out of the crash going, all right, what are we changing here? If we're going to get back in this, what are we doing? What are the rules? How are we going to not get in trouble? And one of them was, I don't want to get paid once anymore on a deal. I just said I don't want to do it. I'm not like, I have no qualms about the money I made prior to the crash. It was very good, provided a great lifestyle for my kids, etc. But every January, maybe a lot of listeners can relate to this, I'd get in January, I'd set my goals and go, man, like I literally got to do it again. Like I got to go create that many deals. Or when I was a realtor, I got to do 100 more deals this year. So instead we go, okay, when a buyer comes in, because they're a qualified buyer who just can't get a loan yet, they're going to do a non-refundable down payment. We average around 26 to 28 grand on that, either upfront or over time. Payday 2 is over time. So now you get now money, helps everybody. Over time money is whatever I'm paying on the underlying debt or to the owner, I'm getting something higher than that, right? A differential from my buyer. They're going to pay me monthly, and there's a spread. That spread ranges $300 to $1,000 per house per month, though. And you figure we carry like 50 or 60 at any one time. And that provides a nice buffer after just a couple months to say, okay, I got a cushion here. If somebody has a life event or they have a death or a divorce, I got a cushion. And then third payday is the most lucrative. It is all of the principal pay down throughout the term of that deal. I don't care which one of the 3 I said, we're gaining principal pay down throughout the term. And then any markup from when we purchased it to when we sell it on terms, because we usually can get a better premium because we are offering terms. They can't go to a bank yet. So those 3 paydays are what I said average a low of 45 to a high of 250. Now I'll tell you, our family team is more on the lower end because of our price range. We're around 78 grand right now, all 3 paydays. But some of the higher markets, Adam, like what comes to mind? DC, California, New York, some Jersey spots. Some students there are much higher than us. It's just pure price range.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chris, is there anything else you want to tell our listeners or anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up today?
2 things come to mind. One is I've got a link for just your tribe, and I'll give it to you in a second. They can get that book you held up, and we usually throw some goodies in there. And it's not, hey, fill out your name and, oh, by the way, put a credit card so we can just charge you shipping. That's not free. Ours is really free. You'll get a nice package. You won't pay 10 cents. The only advice I give you, because I'm always on shows like yours that have awesome hosts, you have an awesome business, awesome things you do. We both aren't so naive to think, okay, every listener should be doing our niche. That's just not reality. So what I tell everybody is, all right, I'm biased to it, but I know that you have choices. So if you're going to have choices, 1, find something you can really get behind. It doesn't matter what it is in real estate. I'm not tied to what you do. I'm trying to help you just have an awesome, awesome career for yourselves in real estate instead of a JOB. Once you find the niche, find someone in that niche, number 2, that has weathered at least a couple storms. Like I've been through a lot, but weather at least a couple market cycles, maybe some life events, because now you have someone that when you have a curveball, because you're going to, you go to them and go, hey, what would you do here? And they either know the answer or they know where to point you. And then number 3, put your blinders on for at least 3 years so that you won't get thrown off by a shiny object and you won't get thrown off by a couple curveballs because they're coming. Just commit for 3 years and you'll have a great experience. That link, Adam, is simply Wicked Smart Books with an S, wickedsmartbooks.com/rent to retirement.
Yeah. And if you didn't know where on earth he was stationed in the United States, I think that name kind of points it out for you. There's only one place in the country I think you're gonna hear that. So again, thank you so much for joining us. It was Chris Prefontaine. He is the best-selling author of multiple books, but the newest one is Real Estate on Your Terms. You can check him out at smartrealestatecoach.com. And that is smartrealestatecoach.com. He also has a podcast that he mentioned earlier. That is smartrealestatecoachpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris. Really appreciate it. To all our listeners, you can check us out at renttoretirement.com. That's renttoretirement.com. Would really appreciate you going to your podcast platform and leaving us a review there. I'm sure Chris would enjoy you listening to his podcast and leaving him a review as well. If you have any questions for us, email them to podcasts@renttoretirement.com. That's podcasts@renttoretirement.com. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for watching the Rent to Retirement YouTube channel. Check out some of our other videos, like this one, or this one here.